The Committee on Taxation Budget Measures Bill is resumed. The House is in committee. When members were last considered this bill, debate on Part 1 was in progress. Simon Bridges had the call. He has but a few seconds remaining, so I'll take the call and it goes to Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's a very good choice. I mean, we did hear some interesting speeches in the House last night, Mr. Chair, and I think one of the most interesting was Simon Bridges standing up and saying that this budget wasn't about the lawyers, the wealthy lawyers, which obviously he is. This was about the street sweepers and the cleaners. But Mr. Bridges said that this budget allowed the street sweepers to actually get ahead and get advanced. He thought that $5 a week was going to allow it. Well, I would argue, of course, that the street sweepers had a chance to get ahead because they had community and adult education, and I can tell you in the Bay there's no more community and adult education courses going on at all at the moment. And of course, with cutting the education budget in real terms, cutting community education even further, cutting tertiary education, and this isn't a budget about getting ahead at all. This is about budget going backwards. But I digress, Mr. Chair. Well, we're talking about, let me talk about GST increases. Now, I'm going to give you an example, a real-world example here, that Mr. Quinn could well learn something here, because I think his mother, who lives in Napier, will be very interested in this. Now, this is the elderly sector. In Napier, there are about 10,000 people who rely on superannuation, and that number is going to increase by another 12,000 in 15 years. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get 10,000 plus 12,000, because obviously some fall down, some fall out of that gap. But what I'm saying is there are a significant number of New Zealanders, and I think Mr. Quinn again would agree with this, and he must be nearly there because I think he's going a little senile, but there are a significant number of people in New Zealand who rely on national superannuation to get through. Now, these are the people, these are the New Zealanders who have worked hard their whole lives. They've worked, they've strived, by and large, they've paid their taxes no matter what it was, and we heard they used to pay 66% tax, then they paid 33% tax, then it went up to 38%, but they have paid tax all their lives, and they don't ask for much. We must admit this, our elderly don't actually ask for much, but they know when they are being had. Yeah, just dignity, you're right, Lynn, they just ask for dignity. They want to retire with dignity, because when you've worked all your life and you reach 65, you want to be able to enjoy life. You want to be able to enjoy life. You know, it doesn't cost much. These people don't get much on the superannuation, but a few of them have got, but they don't complain. They want to go out with their mates, enjoy their bowls. And of course, when you cut the adult and community education, they were concerned because what that actually did is it took away a lot of the support networks and friendships and clubs that they belong to. But that's okay, they grumble, but they live with that. With this increase in GST though, they were really concerned because what this increase in GST has actually done is eroded the spending power they've got. But what's worse than that is you've got an inflation coming in 2011 of 5.9%. Now that isn't a Labour figure, and someone said to me last night, that's just scaremongering. Well, I can tell you that 5.9%, Mr. Chair, is not a Labour figure, it's a government figure, and if you have a look at page 3 in this document, which is B23, the fiscal strategy report, it says there 5.9% inflation. Now, there's a lot of elderly in our community that rely on interest earned from their savings and investments to top up their national super, to live a life of dignity and to have a decent standard of living. What this will actually do is erode the real spending power, the real value of these investments. And we all know examples of this. I mean, we all know people who live in big homes and they say, I bought this in 1950 for only £20,000. And you think, £20,000, goodness me, it was cheap. But of course, they only earned £2,000. That's what inflation does. And inflation erodes real value. It erodes the value of investments. And when you're an elderly person, when you're on the super and you put away your $100,000 or whatever and you're living off the interest, which your tax has already gone up on that, your resident withholding tax, but you're living off this interest, high inflation erodes it. Now, I did a radio interview this morning and I mentioned this, and the guy said, yeah, but inflation's coming down after that, and it's a one-off hit. And it is a one-off hit. We admit that. It is a one-off hit. But that doesn't mean that prices drop. It just means that prices will increase by 5.9%, then increased by 2.4% again. It doesn't mean that prices drop, so the value of the investments created by a one-off hit to GST is actually going to hit the superannuitants a lot harder than I think the vast majority of people think. And that is why I have a major concern about this increase. Mr. Chair?
Paul Quinn.
Mr. Chair, I was just getting going.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I want to